So, welcome. Thank you very much for joining us. My name is Sharif, and I'm part of the Democracy Committee here at the LSE Students Union. And this is the first edition of the Students Union Question Time series. I'm talking to the candidates running for positions in the upcoming elections. And first up, I'm here with Ellie and Azad, who are running for the position of Activities and Development. This is a sabbatical position. So thank you guys very much for joining us.
A pleasure.
Brilliant. Now, we'll try to keep the structure very straightforward. As you can see, this is not a usual time to be having these kind of events. Please do bear with us if we have any technical issues. We have some people helping us with that, but this is all very much a trial. I've got a collection of questions here. Some of them have come from students. Some of them have come from the Students' Union. And each of you, as sabbatical candidates, will have 1 minute to respond to these questions. To make sure we'll get through everyone in time, I'm going to be very strict. So as I said it just a few moments earlier, I'm going to give you a verbal 10-second warning when you only have 10 seconds left. So make sure to try and wrap up when you do hear that. We do have a timeline for all these different positions that we have to hit, so we're going to have to try and be strict with the time. Before that, both candidates are invited to make a short opening statement as sabbatical officer candidates. They have 1 minute to give this opening speech. Are there any questions before we start? We'll be starting with alphabetical order. Okay, if there are no questions, first of all, I'd like to ask Azad, now because of his first name, to give the first opening statement. You have 1 minute, and I will give you a verbal warning when you have 10 seconds left, when you're ready.
Yes. So I would say that in light of the flurry of events being cancelled at the SU, a lot of students are realizing just how important their clubs and societies are in terms of not only allowing them to fulfill a passion, but ensuring that they have a better social life, that they're able to develop better as people. And really, clubs and societies are the lifeblood of the SU. And that is why I'm so passionate about wanting to empower them in so many ways as the next Activities and Development Officer, should I be lucky enough to be elected. I've been part of several throughout my time at LSE, so I'm able to recognize distinct challenges that different clubs and societies face, and that sometimes while the SU is very well-meaning in trying to put out broad policies, it's something that will undeniably benefit some societies but hinder others, and I think I'm best allowed to tackle that approach.
10 seconds.
And I would say I'm a type A candidate who's centered on 3S, fun, fairness, and freedom.
Brilliant. Thank you, Azad. I'll now ask Ellie to her presentation for the duration of the rest of this, of whenever someone's speaking. That would be great. And with that, Ellie, whenever.
Can you hear me? I think the Wi-Fi on my side's gone bad. Sorry. Can you hear me?
Do you want to test the sound quality there for a bit?
Okay, there we go. It's fine. Don't worry. I think it's fine now.
All good?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm Ellie. I'm currently the boxing secretary, and I also sit as one of the AU executives. So I had the pleasure of organising the last AU event and the biggest AU event of the year, which was Fight Night 2020. This is an external event, so we hold it in York Hall, and it meant that I had to deal with a lot of outside contractors and a lot of arrangements for myself, which is partly what's prompted that one of my points in my manifesto is there should be an advisory service established to help students contacting outside venues for services. So reviewing contracts with outside services that can be a little bit difficult for students to manage, things like public liability insurance the SU has to sign for. Sometimes it can be difficult understanding how to get help with this and things like that. I'd love to do the role. I've done many events this year, and I also know that there's a need for societies and clubs in the AU to be united as well, because there's quite a distinct divide between the two of them at the moment. I also have SU facing experience, and I sit in weekly meetings with the current Activities and Development Officer, which gives me good insight into the role. Yeah, and I'd love to be elected.
Thank you very much, Ellie. Okay, with that, we are going, I'd like to thank both candidates first of all for your introductions. With that, we're going to go into our questions. So the way that the questions are going to work is that I'm going to pose a question to both candidates, and then whoever wants to speak, just raise your hand, and then I will verbally tell, okay, Azad or Ellie, you answer the question, and then we'll do that. This is just to stop crosstalk because there's also a little bit of lag. So until you hear your name called out, please, I ask you to not speak. Brilliant. With that, the first question we have is, how will you balance the two halves of your role between sports clubs of the athletics union and the societies in general? Would anyone like to answer this question first?
I'm happy to go first.
Okay, Ellie.
So having spoken to a few societies and also done some stuff with the Women's Interfaith Network, and I put on an event in collaboration with Women Leaders of Tomorrow recently for this LSE Girl Can, I understand that there's a real need for more societal recognition from the SU. So a few of my points focus on this specifically. So I'd like to create a collaboration between the two entities of the AU and the SU. One of the ways in which I'd like to do this is through a joint dinner where discussions of achievements and things that clubs have done for the year and societies can be arranged. I'd also like to put in place a volunteering system led by the SU where anyone can sign up to kind of bring together people from different clubs, people from different societies, so that they can come along, volunteer and meet people they might not normally cross paths with. Quite a few societies I've spoken to have done some really great stuff with volunteering. So the Women's Interfaith Network does sandwich making, and I think there should be more SU recognition of this as well.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, so I think Ellie's raised a lot of good points, and I would echo a lot of what you've said there. I would also personally want to work with the AU executive team directly myself, just to make sure that I'm hearing a lot of the concerns that they've had, but I'd also want to be able to listen to club presidents themselves directly. And part of my one aspect of my manifesto actually discusses having weekly meetings with club and society presidents, and their club presidents would be more than welcome to air any of their current concerns and what issues that their teams are facing. And I think me having that knowledge directly means that I would be much more empowered and much more in the know-how as to help them and raise their case with the SU. Obviously, I think a lot of the times communication is an issue.
Okay, thank you. Your time's up. Okay, brilliant. Sorry again if I do talk over you to give the 10-second verbal warning. It's just the conditions we find ourselves in. Yeah. Thank you both for your answers to those questions. We'll now move on to the second question. And the second question we have today is, do you believe that students' union should take the lead in organizing student activities, or should student societies and clubs take the initiative, and why? Would anyone like to take this question? Sorry, just 1 second. Azad?
Yeah, I would say when it comes to maybe a broad outline, it would be nice for the SU to provide a kind of supportive framework, but I think it's best when students in their own societies develop these ideas for specific events on their own, just because clubs and societies are all about students being able to fully engage their skills and passions outside of the classroom. And I think while it's great for the SU to be involved, I think it's the SU's role to facilitate and help throughout that process and to be an assistant as opposed to kind of leading it. It should be something that's led by students, and the SU should be allies in helping to provide administrative and financial marketing support, but they certainly shouldn't be dictating the substantive content of what those events are.
Thank you. Ellie, when you're ready.
I think the SU currently provides training at the beginning of the year for societies and clubs for when it comes to putting on events, which I think is really good. I think perhaps there's a need for increased check-ins. So at the moment you can ask for help yourself, but the SU don't really contact clubs and societies out with themselves to check in. I think it's unfeasible to expect the SU to organise all events for clubs and societies because, again, as I said, it's important for the clubs to have their own independence and put these on themselves. But also, the SU, there's hundreds of societies, hundreds of sports clubs. You can't expect the SU to be able to feasibly manage all of them and oversee them. But I think there's definitely room for more support from the SU for both clubs, and I've experienced this as a member of a club executive this year, just for a little bit of support and a little bit of help. So a drop-in service would be good.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you both. Next question is one that we're going to be asking all sabbatical officers, and this one is, what experience in student leadership during your time at LC do you have that it makes you fit to carry out your policies if you were elected?
I'm happy to go for this one.
Go for it, Ellie.
So I was the vice captain of the water polo team in last year, and I was also the social secretary for a short amount of time. I'm currently the secretary for boxing, and then I also do that alongside being a member of the AU executive. Being a member of the AU exec means I have SU facing experience, so I spend a lot of time going over funding applications and club applications as well, which means I have an in-depth knowledge of how the SU works, and I think that this would be a real strength to bring to the role. I've also attended quite a few things on the Consent Collective and the Hands Off LSE as part of the AU executive, and I'd love to be able to help Laura and Ella make sure that these really important initiatives carry on next year. As boxing secretary, we run all the sessions, we organise all the training, do the registers, make sure the funding's okay, organise an external coach. So it's quite a lot of work, but I think it's given me really good experience of leadership that I will be able to apply to this role as well.
Thank you very much. Okay, Azad, when you're ready.
Yeah. So I've amassed a wealth of experience by being, for example, the pro bono office of the Law Society last year, treasurer of Drama Society, and within drama, also taking on a directorial role with productions, as well as fundraising for Law Works and being a deputy editor for Amnesty. And having had a range of experiences within different societies, I'm able to see what different problems that they face and what different solutions that they would require, because I think sometimes we tend to take a unilateral approach to clubs and societies, whilst forgetting that they all have their very own distinct problems given the nature of what they do. And in addition to that, I would say I've demonstrated those skills successfully given the success of the societies I've been involved in.
Oh, thank you. Thank you both for your answers to that round of that question. Do you think it'll work better in terms of the 10-second warning if I put up my hand or if I verbally tell you? Which would you prefer?
I've got a timer next to me, so I'm fine with
Likewise.
that.
So either way, you're...
Likewise, I'm fine.
Both ways fine.
Yes.
Okay, brilliant. So I'll just teach it on time, just as an extra warning. Brilliant. Apologies. I've noted some questions based on what you've said so far and what you've said, but we'll go through these questions. So the next question is, if you just bear with me 1 second, is that we have a lot of engaged students at the union, but that means that demand for clubs and societies, there are sometimes bottlenecks, there's bureaucratic issues that happen, and that just has to do with the influx of demand. How would you ensure, where do you think the most effective improvements can be made into how services.
I can't hear the question, sorry, it's lagging quite a bit.
I'm very sorry. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to type the question in the chat. In terms of recording this, the question is displayed on the screen. Okay. We're going to have someone else read that out loud in just a second. That might work better for the recording. So bear with us. Again, apologies for this. This is all new to us.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, perfect.
So the question is, we have some of the most engaged students at LSASU, which means demand for club and society support is high. How would you ensure our student groups continue to receive the best possible service?
Ellie, would you like to go first?
I don't mind.
Oh, okay.
Okay, Azad, when you're ready.
Yes. I would say that to make sure that students in their clubs and societies get as much administrative support, I think, frankly, we need to really reform the bureaucracy within the SU. And I think, in particular, a lot of students and presidents have raised the issue of finances, and reimbursement is a huge issue. And I think, quite frankly, if we just have stricter deadlines imposed upon the SU to sort that issue out, that would just provide a lot of help, because I think it would also go a long way in improving the trust that students have towards the SC when it comes to dealing with clubs and societies. And at present, that seems to be lacking, even though the SC are doing a lot of positive things, just because of long-going issues with bureaucracy and reimbursement that we need to sort out by being stricter on the SU itself.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. And Ellie, when you're ready.
I would say that there's some really good points about the SU, and I think it can be easy to pick out the kind of the really negative things. I've had an overly positive experience working with them and running a club as well. But I agree there's room for improvement. So a few societies have got back to me and said that one of the things that they need, I think, would really improve their experience here would be a more streamlined service when it comes to the approval of events. So submitting event forms and things like that can really delay how many events they put on a week and stuff like that. So I think that's definitely one point to take on board and work on. One of my key points as well is lucidity with funding and establishment of clubs. So more knowledge for students about what the process of what actually goes on. Perhaps an in-person discussion for AU clubs when they apply for funding grants, and for the establishment of clubs as well, because as well, at the moment it's all done by paper. Yeah, but I think there's a lot to work on.
Brilliant. Thank you both for that. The next I start lagging, please do call me out. You talked about your experiences.
Sorry, you're lagging again.
Yeah,
Very annoying. The next question, can you hear me?
at present, yes.
Okay. What frustrations have you experienced for leadership time at LSE? And what would you do to change it?
I'm happy to take this one first.
Go for it.
So I'm going to use an example of being boxing secretary. There's a new system been set up by the SU where we do all of our ticket sales online. Unfortunately, this has made it really, really difficult for us to be able to keep up with whether people are paying for the sessions or not, because it means we have to transfer it all over to a spreadsheet that me and another member of the exec did. And then every single session we have to update the spreadsheet with a download of the online product sales. So I sent a few emails to the SU. I went to speak to Grace about it, and for next year they're now thinking about introducing hopefully a contactless system that makes it a lot easier, which I think is an example of how we've managed to take a proactive approach to an issue that we found within leadership. So hopefully for next year that will have left a lasting positive change for the next exec of boxing.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. And Azad, when you're ready.
Yeah, I would have some things to say on this. I would say, obviously, I don't think the SC's been ever actively malicious against clubs and societies, but it has been frustrating at times. Obviously, I've raised reimbursement as an issue, and I've at times not claimed expenses and just paid for things out of pocket because I don't want to have to put my society through a financial strain. And also, for example, I think specifically being involved in drama a lot, when you're doing events at the venue, you have to get an event supervisor who has to be paid a certain minimum amount for their time. And obviously, it's important for people to get paid, but when the work that they're doing is something that a society member could actually do for free, quite willingly, I think it then speaks to another hassle that a lot of students have to come onto, and that would be something I would reform specifically.
Okay, thank you both for that. My next question is slightly more, I can see that on the spectrum of AU clubs and societies, you tend to fall on different ends of them, relatively speaking. Could you try and speak to your other side? So Ellie, if I could ask you to speak to what you've learned about societies and what you would do to help them. And Azad, the same with AU clubs. You know, what have you learned from them in terms of their main frustrations and why they should back you as their candidate? Whoever would like, who would like to go first? Ellie, was that?
Yeah, sorry, I accidentally muted myself.
Okay, no worries. It happens quite a bit, I found out. When you're ready.
So when I considered running for the role, one of my key considerations was that the majority of my experience, especially sitting on AU executive, means that it's based on AU clubs and things like that, which is why I started attending the Women's Interfaith sandwich making, to kind of be able to speak to people. There's a lot of women there from different societies and kind of get insight into how they find the SU and how they would like to see improvement, really. I've also spent a bit of time speaking to Laura Goddard about the consent collective work that she's been doing and the Hands Off LSE. I attended recently a round table on that where we had some really proactive discussions about how we can make sure that positive change is taken by LSE in light of some really important motions that they've put through. I've also reached out to a number of societies and kind of said I'd like to learn more basically about what it is to be a society and how you feel that the SU should help you and what they've done positively this year and what improvements could be made and what they want to see in their role for next year.
With regards to clubs, I actually did water polo last year with Ellie and Mick, and with some I admittedly wasn't that good and I had to drop out because of other commitments, but I am familiar with the struggles that clubs face, and in particular certain sports players, sportsmen and sportswomen face when having to deal with some of the frustrations of the SU and the AU. And one of my specific points was in relation to the Hands Off LSE campaign and what they've been doing with regards to AU reform in terms of setting up an independent body to deal with sexual harassment and assault cases within the AU when they unfortunately occur, just for the idea that justice must not only be done but be seen to be done, and making sure that people fully trust in the process and that they're able to feel like they're safe in participating within clubs. And that's something that I would specifically be very interested in promoting.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you very much to both of you. I have one final question. You can take a little bit of time thinking about this. The question is very simple. If you had to come up with a phrase that's not your slogan to sum up why you're the best candidate for this position, what would that be? You can take some time thinking about this, but whoever is ready first, you can go. It has to be phrase. All right, Ellie, would you like to go first?
Yeah, I think mine would be forward-facing SU experience that benefits negotiations for AU clubs and societies.
Okay, that's brilliant. Thank you very much. And Azad?
I would say a deep engagement with several societies and a club, which means that I not only have the breadth but also the depth to deal with the issues that clubs and societies face, and I'm able to represent a wide coalition of students.
Okay, That's brilliant. I'd like to thank both our candidates, Azad and Ellie, for joining us for this question time. Again, apologies to those watching and to the candidates for any technical issues. And yeah, thanks again for actually coming and making this event. I know it's a very troubling time, and it's been brilliant to have this happen within schedule. Okay, thank you both very much.
Thank you.
And well done. All right, good luck.